everybody, and welcome back to Psyched Out, a podcast focused on all things psychology, like psychological thrillers, unethical experiments, true crime cults, and more. I am your host, Emily, and for those who don't know, I have a bachelor's degree in forensic psychology and a background in law enforcement. This helps me provide unique insight on some of the world's most famous cases, movies, and events. In today's episode, we're finally going to be doing part 2 of the NFL Iceberg, which involves greed, crime, murder, and more, and all sorts of things. I apologize that this episode is coming out as late as it is. There were some other projects that I was working on. Last week I was on a family vacation, and then this week I had plans with friends. It's been busy. I've been busy, and I am just a one-woman show, but we're here. We're doing it now, so I'm going to get this episode out as soon as possible for you guys. I've got some projects that I'm working on. Next week's episode is either going to be a movie episode or an episode on Jerusalem syndrome. That's a really interesting topic. So stay tuned for that. If you are over here on the YouTubes, hello. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. You guys are fantastic. Now, to jump into the episode, I think we left off on tier 5, which is theft, burglary, and robbery. So we're going to go ahead and jump right back where we left off. First and foremost, we have Michael Bennett, who was drafted to the Minnesota Vikings in 2001 as the 27th overall pick, where he would play as running back. He was somewhat successful in his position, and Michael was eventually traded after suffering injuries on the Vikings, where he would then hop from team to team, seemingly unwanted, which is very unfortunate. Injuries are devastating to a lot of careers, which, it's a lot of circumstantial stuff that helps end a career, which is really, really sad. Anywho, while the NFL didn't really know what to do with him, Michael set out for a career of crime. Michael is actually double dipping when it comes to this iceberg, so I'm not really going to place him in this tier due to his more, I'm going to place him in this tier due to his more severe charge. He's got quite a few, charges racked up, but his first charge is that of wire fraud, where he served 15 months, which would have been a previous tier, as we discussed. Then he went on for a second charge, which was burglary, identity theft, and attempted theft. And then, in fact, Michael was arrested for these charges while still on probation for his previous charges, and this second crime spree actually landed him a 5-year prison sentence. So, for those who don't know the difference between burglary and robbery, burglary is when there's not necessarily another person involved. You break into a residence, you steal some stuff. Robbery is when you break in, somebody's there, you use force on them or you threaten them, you steal their stuff, then you leave. So that's kind of the difference. I know some people get confused, so that's the easy simplified version of how to tell the difference between those. Now we have Cecil Collins, who was selected as the first pick in the 5th draft round of 1999 by the Miami Dolphins. Nicknamed Cecil the Diesel, Cecil was contracted to 3 years with the team. Unfortunately, whatever prospects Collins had in the NFL came to a screeching halt when he broke into a home in David, Florida. The home belonged to a married woman who he knew from the gym, and Collins' defense was that he only wanted to watch the woman sleep and did not break into the apartment to steal. I don't know about you, but if that was my defense and my defense attorney said that, I would want a new trial, because I would be more okay with you breaking into a home to steal stuff than break into a home to watch a woman sleep that you met at the gym. I don't know how that makes him sound better, or how they thought that was going to help him at all, because to me, that is way worse. Dude's just actively stalking a lady. It sounds bad, but the more societal, socially acceptable thing is to break into a home to steal stuff, not just mouth breathe over a lady while she sleeps. It's fucking weird. Anywho, Collins was sentenced to 15 years in prison and then ultimately served 12. Rightfully so, because you're weird as shit, dude. Now we have Maurice Claret, who was the overall 101 pick in the 2005 NFL Draft, where he was signed to the Denver Broncos, who I kind of forget are a team, but they are. The contract with the Broncos was a 4-year deal. Like many others on the list, Claret fell into a series of criminal activities, And while he's shaped up now and is a public speaker slash entrepreneur, it's important that I include him on the list because he himself acknowledges his past mistakes. And I think it goes to show that some people, even criminals, can change their behavior, even though it's a small percentage. There's, still people out there that are willing to do better. So shout out to Claret for getting his life back together and choosing to help others and try and prevent people from making the same mistakes he did. I super, super respect that. Good on him. Nevertheless, Claret's criminal history contains the following: 2 armed robberies outside of the Opiate Lounge in Columbus, a traffic violation, and then consequent car chase, as well as possession of a weapon without a permit. And again, robbery, as I mentioned, is where you are actively, holding somebody hostage, threatening them, taking things from them. There's a person involved. You're not just breaking in somewhere and taking things without, incident or without a scene. Now, in all of these crimes, in total, Claret landed a total of 7.5 years in prison, where he was released to a halfway house less than 4 years into the sentence. Now, I'm going to be honest, 7.5 years for 2 armed robberies is, in my opinion, not nearly enough. Armed robbery is a freaking heinous crime. I can't believe he only got 7.5 years for that. That's absolutely asinine, in my opinion. Again, I also don't really know how they put him into a halfway house after only 4 years. But he was one of the rare exceptions where he did end up turning his life around, so good on him. But if it wasn't this guy, this could have ended very badly. But I digress. Ryan Leaf played as a quarterback in the NFL for 4 years for teams such as the Dallas Cowboys and Seattle Seahawks. Passing a total of 3,666 yards, Leaf had a 50.00 rating as a quarterback. I don't know what that means. I'm assuming that's good. After retiring as a quarterback from the NFL, Leaf went on to coach at Texas A&M. In 2008, Leaf was out on indefinite leave from his coaching position, where he consequently resigned after it was revealed that he asked a player for pills to cope with wrist pain. Leaf's opioid abuse dates back to 2002. In 2009, Leaf was also charged for burglary. Then, in 2012, Leaf was charged again for burglary and theft, along with drug charges. And then, as if burglary wasn't enough, Leaf went on to be convicted of and pled guilty to misdemeanor domestic battery in 2020. This could place Leaf in the next tier, but due to it being classified as battery and a misdemeanor, he will remain here instead of tier 6, which handles assault and more like felony charges. But don't worry, guys, because as is common for the NFL and apparently ESPN, your job is secure no matter what you do, because Leaf was an ESPN analyst for the 2019-2020 college season, and in 2021 he has appeared multiple times as an analyst for Sky Sports in the UK. So you can do all of this shit and not have repercussions, because why would you? Domestic battery, who cares about that? Who cares? Domestic battery, it's a misdemeanor. Nobody gives a shit. Come on, guys, really? You're going to have a dude with all of these criminal charges just be on your TV being like, oh, I'm a legal analyst. How about we don't give this piece of shit a platform? Just throwing that out there. It's an idea. As for legal repercussions, due to a bunch of plea deals, Leaf only had a 5-year sentence for his troubles and was released after 2.5 years. And my opinion on plea deals is that I think they're stupid. I understand their purpose. It's because the justice system as a whole is very overloaded, very overwhelmed. And it's to get a lot of the less important cases out of the way. But I think it makes a mockery of the justice system and the victims involved in the justice system. I can't tell you how many people that have been arrested on felonies that get plea deals, and they don't even get misdemeanor charges, they just get extended probation, and they have a history of 12 felonies. It's ridiculous. I think there's a time and a place for plea deals, but at a certain point, if somebody's not going to change their behavior, they need to take plea deals away, and it shouldn't be an option. But that's just my opinion. It infuriates me that people can keep reoffending without actual consequences, but here we are. Next is a name that everybody and their mother is familiar with, O.J. Simpson. Like I said, this case is very, very popular. But for those who don't know, if you've been living under a rock, O.J. played in the NFL for 11 seasons, primarily with the Buffalo Bills. His position was running back. He was so successful in his position that he is often considered one of the greatest running backs of all time. I believe he was inducted in the Hall of Fame as well. However, his limelight and admiration from the public would eventually run out when he was charged for the murder of his former wife, Nicole Brown, and Ron Goldman. OJ is placed here in this tier list instead of tier 7 because he was successfully acquitted of the murders, which that was a whole mess in and of itself. And many believe that OJ is responsible, but some believe his son is instead responsible for the deaths and that OJ took the fall. There's like a lot of conspiracy theories about it. I think OJ did it. He definitely had some involvement in it. Regardless, America's beloved running back was officially guilty of robbery and kidnapping. That was non-negotiable, and these were due in part to a separate instance as well as the murders. In truth, the case is quite extensive and could garner an entire episode on its own, but there's been plenty of documentaries, so I don't really feel like it's something I need to do. But if that's something that you would like for me to do anyways, despite all the plethora of stuff out there, please give this video some love and let me know down in the comments, and I can definitely put something together for you guys. As a result of the crimes that OJ was convicted of, he was given a sentence of 9 to 33 years in prison, but he ultimately served 9, probably because he was super wealthy and super famous, and he actually had a lot of people supporting him saying he wasn't guilty. I still don't quite understand that, but it is what it is. Now we have Stanley Wilson Sr., who was picked up by the Cincinnati Bengals in the 9th round of the draft to play as a running back. Instead of being used as a running back, Wilson was used most often as a fullback. Unfortunately for Wilson, his career was drastically altered due to cocaine addiction. The most notorious incident that occurred regarding his drug usage was when Wilson's position coach, Jim Anderson, found him in the middle of a cocaine high the evening before the Super Bowl game with the 49ers. Due to a third strike policy of drug abuse, taking place in the league, Wilson was removed from the roster and permanently banned. So there's actual punishment here, which I'm kind of surprised by. Now, former coach for the Bengals, Sam Wooch, I don't know how to say that, argued that one of the biggest reasons they lost to the 49ers was due to Wilson's absence. Still in the throes of drug addiction, Wilson went on to steal $130,000 worth of property from a Beverly Hills, California home in order to support his drug habit. This type of behavior is super common. Again, addiction is a beast in and of itself, and I don't envy anybody who's ever had to suffer from it, but also it gets to a certain point where I feel that the justice system does not help addicts by continuously releasing them and slapping them on the wrist instead of getting them legitimate actual help. But again, I digress. Because of his burglary charge, Wilson was sentenced to 22 years in prison, in part due to the amount of stolen property and the financial loss to the homeowner, because $130,000 is a lot of money. I will say I'm surprised that he got 22 years for burglary, whereas the guy that did 2 armed robberies only got like 7.5, because, you know, the justice system makes sense. Whatever. Now we're going to move on to tier 6, which is sexual assault, and sex crimes. This section might be pretty triggering, so if that's something that you don't want to listen to, I will not blame you in the slightest. I don't go into a whole lot of detail. I don't think so, but it's just some sensitive crimes. They can be triggering, so proceed with caution. Take care of yourselves. There's no judgment. First off, we have Kevin Allen, who is known as a professional American football player whose position was that of a tackle. His career consisted of playing for the Philadelphia Eagles, so he only lasted a single season. This was due to being cut as his performance was severely lackluster. That, and with cocaine charges pending against him, Allen wasn't long for the league. And then shortly after being cut, Allen, along with his roommate Scott Cartwright, were charged and sentenced for rape. Allen received a 15-year sentence, but only served 33 months in prison. At the time, he received a lifelong ban from the league, which was later lifted, because, again, we're not punishing people. Also, of all the people to punish, can we punish rapists, for God's sake? You give him a 33-month sentence in prison, and then you go, actually, I'm not going to lift your lifelong ban from the NFL? How about fuck this guy for raping somebody? Like, this rape is the only crime that there is no excuse for. There's no built-in defense for rape. Murder, you could be like, oh, I was defending myself. Oh, I was protecting my home. Oh, I got into a fight and I was scared for my life. There is no excuse for rape. None whatsoever. Stealing. Wow, my family is super poor and I just want to put food on the table for my kids. Okay, cool. Makes sense. Yeah, you still stole, but like you have a legit reason for it. There's no purpose or reason for rape other than you are a piece of shit human being. So can we please, for the love of God, stop giving these fuckers, like, a slap on the wrist, because they're just going to reoffend because they literally don't give a fuck about anybody else other than themselves. I'm sorry. This infuriates me where it's like, oh my God, he could have had a 15-year sentence, but he only served 33 months. And that lifelong ban we were going to give him, guess what? It doesn't fucking apply anymore. This guy can rot in hell. I don't like him. Now we have Trevon Boykin, who made his way onto the Seattle Seahawks after becoming an undrafted free agent. Playing as quarterback for the Seattle Seahawks in 2016, he was listed as a backup for Russell Wilson, which is one of the few NFL names that I actually know. Playing a few regular games, Trevon was less than stellar in his performance and was later let go due to domestic violence allegations. However, Trevon had quite the criminal record by the time of his release, having punched an officer, carried marijuana, whatever, it's marijuana, but back then it was a big deal. He was publicly intoxicated and would even assault family members. However, the worst instance was when Trevon assaulted his girlfriend at the time, consequently breaking her jaw. As a result, Trevon was given a 3-year prison sentence. Yeah, that's fucked up. The amount of strength that you need to break somebody's jaw is actually insane. So fuck this guy also. But at least he got like a somewhat of a good prison sentence. I think he should get more than 3 years for breaking a jaw, but at least he went to prison. So I guess that's something. Now we have Thomas Hollywood Henderson. Thomas Henderson was selected in the first round of the 1975 NFL Draft, being the 18th overall pick. Playing as a linebacker for the Dallas Cowboys during his rookie season, Henderson focused on special teams. In 1978, he helped win Super Bowl XII for his team by scoring a touchdown. Throughout his entire career, Henderson suffered from severe drug addiction, even keeping an inhaler with liquid cocaine in his pants, which he'd use during games, which is actually fucking insane, and I didn't know that was something that you could do. Despite this, Henderson continued to play and was signed by many teams due to his talent, regardless of the drug issue, which to me feels so exploitative. You know what I mean. It feels bad. Because here's this guy suffering from addiction who clearly has problems, who cannot go a game without freaking using a liquid and cocaine inhaler, and you're not going to get him help? You're just going to sign him to your team because you want to win a Super Bowl? Like, how about you take care of him as a human being? Jesus Christ, people. Holy shit. Like, that's insanely messed up. Now, aside from substance abuse, Henderson was arrested in 1983 and charged with 2 counts of false imprisonment and 1 count each of forced oral copulation. Oral copulation is defined as the non-consensual act of forcing contact between someone's mouth and anus or other genitalia. Additionally, Henderson faces sexual battery charges along with furnishing cocaine to a minor. Some allegations state that the crimes were committed while Henderson was in possession of a gun. Ultimately, Henderson was arrested when a 15-year-old girl made allegations that she and a 17-year-old paraplegic wheelchair-using girl were lured by Henderson to his apartment. The youngest girl stated to police that Henderson pulled out a gun and threatened her into having sex with him, where he then went on to assault both girls while threatening to kill them. After finding a .38 caliber gun along with drug paraphernalia in Henderson's apartment, he attempted to defend himself by stating that he'd provided both girls with drugs in exchange for consensual sex. Fuck this guy. Good God. Regardless of this, I hope everyone here understands that there is no consent to sex from anyone under the age of 18 with a grown adult, let alone one brandishing a gun and making threats. Also, if they're all using drugs, you can't consent anyways because nobody is in their right state of mind. This should be obvious. I shouldn't have to explain this. That type of defense is used quite often by sexual predators attempting to gaslight others into believing their own twisted sexual fantasies because they are sexual deviants and they cannot understand that normal people do not think that way. This is basically a fantasy where the victims wanted to have sex, and he is saying that that's a thing to defend himself when in reality they did not want to have sex with him, but he has convinced himself that because he wants what he wants and he's going to get what he wants. Just if you don't understand that and you think, oh, well, they had something to do with it, please don't ever listen to this podcast again. I don't like you. Pleading no contest to the charges, Henderson was sentenced to 4 years and 8 months, where he only served 28 months because, again, we don't hold sexual predators accountable for literally anything. And records state that Henderson has been clean and considered an upstanding citizen since his release, which, fine, sure, whatever, he was rehabilitated. I still think he's a piece of shit because I don't care who you are. If you're going to rape anybody, let alone underage girls, you are always going to be the scum of the earth. Dave Meggett played 10 NFL seasons, primarily as a return specialist. A prominent figure in his position, he aided in the Giants winning Super Bowl 45. To this day, Meggett is second in the league for punt return yards. Aside from being famous for his NFL career, Meggett is also well known for having 9 children with 8 different women, along with his criminal history. In 1990, Meggett was charged with soliciting a prostitute, though the charges were eventually dropped, which is not uncommon. In 1995, Megget was charged with assaulting his girlfriend at the time, but like before, the charges were dismissed as the judge believed the girlfriend to be an aggressor. Cool. Now, it is possible that this is true because even in my own experience, many women have and can abuse men. That is very much a thing that has and does happen. However, I do take it with a grain of salt considering Megget's other crimes. In 1998, Megget was arrested for presumably assaulting an escort after he'd had a three-way sexual encounter. In 2000, the charge for the assault ended with a hung jury. In 2006, Megget resigned from his current job as a Parks and Rec director after claims were made that he'd sexually assaulted a former girlfriend. This led to a conviction in 2007 for sexual battery, though he only received 2 years probation because, again, we don't punish people who are sexual predators. In 2009, Megget was then arrested for robbing and raping a part-time student at the College of Charleston. And then at long last, Megget actually received a punishment for his crimes because in 2010 he was convicted of burglary and criminal sexual misconduct, leading to a 30-year sentence that he is still serving. So get fucked, dude. Took long enough, but we got there. Now, given the extent of his criminal history, it's easy to get lost, so I'll break things down for you. Megget was on the Giants from 1989 to 1994. This means that when allegations of soliciting a prostitute in 1990 were released, he was still employed. It's prostitution. It is what it is. Megget was then on the New England Patriots from 1995 to 1997, meaning that allegations of assault on his former girlfriend were during his time of employment in the NFL. Megget then moved on to the Jets in 1998, where he faced charges for assaulting an escort. It was only after the season that the Jets opted against re-signing him, which means he still collected a paycheck from the league and team despite his recurrent violence against women. So again, we are enabling men who are predators, not just predators in general, but sexual predators, and giving them millions of dollars because they could help you win a Super Bowl. Do we not see the problem here? Does anybody else get upset about this, or is it just me? Because this is absolutely asinine and ridiculous, and it's just a slap into the face to every person that has ever been victimized by these players. It's ridiculous. It's stupid. It shouldn't be a thing, and yet it is. I'm going to continue to get mad about it because there's going to be more instances like this, but I don't care. I'm going to be mad because I actually give a shit. Anywho, Lawrence Phillips played 3 seasons in the NFL as a running back where he had an unimpressive career due to legal troubles. The first major incident regarding Phillips occurred in 2005 when Phillips intentionally ran into 3 teenagers with his car. This was due to a dispute he'd had with them during a pickup game of football, because that makes sense and your emotional regulation is superb. At this time, Phillips was wanted in San Diego for 2 domestic violence cases with a former girlfriend who claimed he'd choked her until she'd fallen unconscious. At this time, Los Angeles police were also looking for Phillips in relation to another domestic abuse case. While Phillips served time for his charges, he became a prime suspect in the murder of a cellmate, but hung and killed himself before charges could be filed. This lands Phillips in Tier 6 instead of Tier 7, because as I did more digging into his criminal history, I learned that during Phillips' time on the Rams, he was battling substance abuse issues with alcohol. So also he wasn't actually charged with murder at all, but regardless. Upon release from the Rams, Phillips was given to the Dolphins, as Phillips' coach called in a favor to keep Phillips' career intact. So again, we're not actually getting people help for the problems that they have. We're going to use and abuse them and throw them around on a team, because that way they still get a paycheck and we can win a Super Bowl. To this day, Coach Vermeil says he would have done things differently and kept Phillips on the Rams roster instead of passing him off to Coach Jimmy Johnson for the Miami Dolphins. With a career intact despite clearly needing help and rehabilitation, Phillips was released from the Dolphins only after another assault incident occurred at a nightclub. And all Phillips' complete list of charges landed him 31 years in prison. He only served 7 because, like I said, he ended up killing himself, and that's why he's not on Tier 7, because he wasn't actually charged with murder or anything, but clearly he doesn't have a problem with assaulting people. And honestly, fuck the NFL for not getting people the help that they actually need and just pawning them off onto others. I don't care that this guy's like, oh, I would have done things differently. You didn't, and you fucked this dude over, and he might have been able to change his life and turn things around. Who, he may still have been a piece of shit, but who cares? You could have at least tried and you didn't. So that's on you, dude, and I hope you feel guilty about that. Next, we have Salim Rashid playing as a linebacker in the NFL for the 49ers, though he saw little playing time due to injury. In fact, Rashid only played 45 games in his career with the NFL and later the Canadian Football League. After his unimpressive football career, Rashid went on to coach and teach at Irwin High School. In 2012, Rashid was charged with food stamp fraud and falsifying documents. I kind of forget that food stamp fraud is a thing, but apparently it is. Later, Rashid was charged with immigration fraud after marrying a Moroccan woman and then marrying an American woman for citizenship without divorcing his first wife. I shouldn't laugh at that, but that is a little silly. It feels like some weird Scooby-Doo antics. Then, in 2013, Rashid was sentenced to 3 years in prison after having sex with 2 students while teaching at Woodlawn High School in Birmingham, Alabama. Oh, that's the part that why he's here. While both students were legal and of age, it's illegal to have sex with a student in the state of Alabama. Rightfully so. Alabama? You're doing something right. Because, like, the power dynamic that happens between teachers and students, here's the thing. Students, a lot of times, will have crushes on teachers. That just happens. I mean, it happens in high school, grade school, college. It's a thing. People are people. Humans are humans. You're going to have crushes. It's up to the teacher to not notice that and then prey on that, because you see it time and time again where it's like, oh, well, this child likes me, or, oh, my student liked me. It doesn't matter. You are in a power dynamic. You should not abuse that power dynamic to have sex with somebody, because you can just use it to manipulate the shit out of them. It's ridiculous. And the authority, the abuse of authority, and then, like I said, the possible manipulation is something that I don't think people consider enough when it comes to these instances. Because when you get these predators, they know what they're doing. Like, just to get on the psych side of things a little bit. When you have predators like this, they know that they have the upper hand in a power dynamic. They know that they can manipulate the person beneath them. Well, for instance, a teacher and a student. Oh, I'll give you this A in my class if you sleep with me. Well, let's just say this teacher also knows that little Timmy has a rough home life and his parents beat the shit out of him if he doesn't get good grades. Well, little Timmy's going to go, okay, cool, I want that A so my parents don't beat me. I'm going to sleep with my teacher. There's a huge manipulation of emotions, of external factors, of authority, of a power position. Like, it's just gross. And the fact that Alabama says we don't play with that shit and they put a law in effect, good on you, Alabama. I actually respect the fuck out of you. Good for you. We need, honestly, I think all states should have a law like that. I think that would eliminate a lot of problems that we see where teachers end up sleeping with their students. Because honestly, it's way more prolific than I think people realize, and it should not be, but unfortunately it is. Anywho, I hope that nobody blames the students for what happened, because yes, they were of legal age, but for all the reasons I mentioned previously, this is definitely on Rashid, because he should not have been sleeping with anyone who is freshly 18, regardless of circumstances, and knowing his position within the school. Also, it's high school, so, like, regardless, even if they're 18, they're still in high school, you fucking weirdo. Now we have Darren Sharper, who played in the NFL for 14 seasons as a safety, leading to a Super Bowl win for the Saints, being that of Super Bowl 44. On top of a Super Bowl win, Sharper set a couple of NFL records. For instance, the most interception return yards in a season being that of 376 yards. However, away from the NFL, Sharper was a very dangerous man willing to hurt a lot of people. In 2011, 2 women filed a criminal complaint against Sharper after they claimed to have been sexually assaulted. The story goes that both women were brought over to Sharper's residence from a nightclub and passed out on the couch, drugged from some type of substance, Lord knows what. One of them women woke up to a man, and this is graphic, so I apologize. One of the women woke up to a man attempting to put his penis in her mouth. She passed out again shortly after due to the drugs and woke up again to a man removing her dress. The third time she woke up, she noticed that both her underwear and her companion's underwear were missing. Both women underwent examinations in rape kits, but there is no evidence to indicate that the kits were ever sent off for testing or that Sharper was ever questioned, which again is not that uncommon, and it's why sexual assault victims do not come forward, because they don't think anybody's going to care or do anything, and it's on law enforcement to treat every case as if it were real until proven otherwise. That's how I approach everything, and I think that's how every other officer should approach things. Now, both women, as I said, were horribly failed by the police of Miami Beach and the forensic teams, because they should have had those kits sent out and those kits should have been tested. But unfortunately, that didn't happen, which allowed Sharper to prey on other women as well. Because in 2013, Sharper went on to drug a woman who was working as a model at a pre-Super Bowl party in New Orleans. After she was drugged, Sharper's best friend, Brandon Alicia, raped the woman. And then later in the same year of 2003, Sharper is said to have raped another woman in New Orleans. 2 months later, Sharper drugged and raped 2 women with an accomplice, Eric Nunez. 1 month after this particular incident, Sharper drugged 2 women and raped one of them in Los Angeles. Then less than a month after that, Sharper met 3 women from ASU, drugged and raped 2 of them. And then in 2014, Sharper committed 2 other separate incidents of rape. So to give you a better understanding of just how much Sharper escalated his behavior, the following is a timeline with each distinct incident. This guy is very clearly a serial rapist, and he could have been stopped if Miami police actually did their job, but they didn't. And we're going to see basically how much he escalated, because this is actually crazy. So, first incident, March 18th, 2011. Then you have February 2nd, 2013. So about a 2-year difference. Then you have August 31st, 2013. So February, January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August. So about 6 months. Then you go to August 31st, 2013. Then you go to September 23rd, 2013. Then you go to October 30th, 2013. November 20th, 2013. So there's a massive escalation here. Then there's a little bit of an extension, January 14th, from November 20th to January 14th. And then immediately you go from January 14th to January 15th. This is insane. This is like serial killer behavior. This dude cannot control himself. I'm tapping my screen and it's making the camera shake. But this dude literally cannot control himself. His sexual urges, I say that even though I don't really give a shit about how he feels, are so, like, prevalent in his day-to-day thinking that he literally cannot exist outside of raping women, drugging women, raping women. Like, he's just abusing the fuck out of them. And to be clear, like, every woman that was assaulted reported the incident to police, and almost all of them underwent rape kits and examinations, like SANE exam, sexual assault, or I forget what the N stands for, but E is examination. So after all was said and done with each, case, individual trial in each state, Sharper was given a 20-year sentence, which I'm glad. Get fucked. Go to prison. But the fact that it took so many, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8 separate instances with more than one woman for most instances for anything to happen, freaking insane. Like, this is why serial rapists get away with shit, is because they get good at what they're doing, like serial killers do. Any prolific criminal, let's say like somebody who's really good at burglaries, they get good at what they're doing, and they hone that skill, and it takes forever to catch them. But if you go back to what Miami police could have done, this dude could have been caught. He could have been in prison, and then all 7 other incidences could have never happened. But here we are, where multiple other people are victimized because of a failure on law enforcement. I'm calling the pot, I'm the pot calling the kettle black, or I'm calling them out. I don't know the correct phrase. Regardless, they should have done better, and they didn't. Now we have Alonzo Spellman, who was drafted to the Chicago Bears in the first round of the 1992 NFL Draft as the 22nd overall pick. Primarily a defensive lineman, playing 123 games throughout his career. Successful on most of the teams he played for, Spellman suffered from bipolar disorder. Now, bipolar disorder is something that is mostly characterized as like a mood disorder, but it also very much affects behavior. It's a lot of very, very highs, very, very lows. There's also type 1 and type 2. I can't exactly remember the difference off the top of my head, but bipolar disorder is very, very crippling. It affects a lot of people. It can lead to manic episodes, erratic behavior, things that don't necessarily make sense, where you look at somebody, and this is going to sound bad, but people will look at them and go, oh, that person's like crazy, because they just cannot emotionally regulate or control themselves in the way that a, quote, normal person would. So I sympathize with Spellman suffering from bipolar disorder because it's a very intense mental illness. But mental illness is never an excuse for the crimes that you commit. It can play a part, but it does not just allow you to do whatever you want. So, again, I feel for him. Bipolar disorder is something that is very, very difficult. It affects a lot of relationships, and the medications are very, very tough as well. So, I feel for him on that. That said, criminally, you are still liable for what you are doing. Because your bipolar disorder can be a cause or an underlying factor, it doesn't, like I said, excuse the behavior. It's also important to note that while I sympathize with Spellman regarding his mental illness, it should be recognized that resources are hard to come by if you don't know where to start and you don't know how to ask for help, especially with things such as bipolar disorder or mental illnesses as severe and intense as bipolar disorder. And as we've seen, the NFL doesn't do a great job about caring for its players. It uses and abuses them. So it wouldn't surprise me if that was partially why Spellman didn't get the help that he probably should have. Given his crimes, it's clear for Spellman that the people around him failed him, and he himself did not aid his mental well-being because he continued to not seek help. Again, that can be hard to do, so I'm not going to blame him too much for it, but like I said, he was not helped by the people around him. So Spellman's criminal career began on July 23, 2002, when he suffered a manic episode while at an airport. Again, this is bipolar disorder. This makes sense. This is not uncommon. He went on to verbally abuse and accost flight staff and passengers, leading to an emergency landing. Again, this incident in and of itself can be chalked up to he's not properly medicated. He's not getting the help that he needs. Maybe we treat this as more of a mental health issue than a criminal issue. Instances like that, I completely agree with. He then went on to, in January 29, 2008, he then went on to lead police in a chase after an altercation at Tulsa, Oklahoma. I didn't find a whole lot of details on what that is, but again, not great, because you're putting other people in danger, and including the officers. There's just a lot of things that can go wrong in police chases, so not great. Spellman was arrested again on November 2nd, 2015, after being stopped for multiple outstanding warrants. Overall, Spellman's charges include eluding police, interference with a flight crew, and assault. So, not necessarily the most heinous crimes, but because of the assault, he is on this list. He ultimately served a 1-year prison sentence. I hope more than anything that he got the proper help that he needed, because clearly this is somebody suffering from severe mental health issues, and he doesn't really know how to help himself, because even like as in 2015, I mean, mental illness was starting to be destigmatized, but it's still not where it's at today. And to be honest, today there's still a huge stigma around it. So Lord knows what he was going through. So I feel for him a little bit. Then we have C.J. Spillman, who was signed as an undrafted free agent to the Chargers in 2009. Being an unimpressive player for the Chargers, Spillman was then signed over to the 49ers, where he established himself as a successful safety/special teamer. On October 2nd, 2014, Spillman fell under investigation for sexual assault. Despite this, Spillman, who was signed by the Cowboys at this time, was still allowed to play and participate on the team. I have a strong opinion on this. I think that you are innocent until proven guilty. But that said, he was convicted and sentenced to 5 years. So I think it's okay for him to play until he's proven guilty, because I don't think you should just automatically lose your job. But at the same time, I think that it's up to the teams to use their discretion, because there are a lot of people who, if they had sexual assault charges, would lose their job. So it seems like there might be a little bit of a double standard when it comes to the NFL, which is not that surprising because it's the NFL, and like I've already said, they do not care about anybody other than themselves and the money in their pockets. So yeah, he was convicted and sentenced to 5 years for sexual assault. Apparently, you can sexually assault people and still play football, because it's not even just Spillman that continued to play, it's been other people as well. Dana Stubblefield was drafted in the first round of the 1993 NFL Draft as the 26th overall pick to play as a defensive tackle. Playing for the 49ers originally, Stubblefield won a plethora of accolades during his time in the NFL, including a Super Bowl championship. Despite having a plethora of success on the field, it was revealed that Stubblefield not only supplied but also used performance-enhancing drugs, aka steroids and things like that. Additionally, Stubblefield went on to be charged with sexual assault in 2016 while out of the league. The story behind the assault is that Stubblefield sexually assaulted a disabled woman who was 31 years of age at the time. Why are you assaulting disabled people? Good God. First the guy raping the lady in the wheelchair, and now you're sexually assaulting somebody else who's disabled. Listen. Why are... you know what? I'm not even going to say anything. I'm flabbergasted. Stubblefield reportedly contacted the victim through a babysitting website by promising the woman a babysitting job. Stubblefield successfully lured her to his home, where he forcibly raped the woman, performed oral copulation by force, and falsely imprisoned her after she was lured. As a result of the crime, Stubblefield was given a sentence of 15 years to life. So at least he got the book thrown at him. But you have to be a huge piece of shit to not only do all of that to anybody in general, let alone a disabled person. What the hell? Good God, people, get it together. Nate Webster was a linebacker drafted in the 3rd round of the 2000 NFL Draft to the Buccaneers. Webster's biggest career highlight is that he won a Super Bowl championship. However, Webster's criminal career began even before he was in the NFL. While he was still playing college football at Miami, Webster was arrested for false imprisonment after he grabbed Natalie Brady, an ex-girlfriend, by the throat, threw her onto the ground, and then shoved her into a car that he and a friend were riding in. Charges were dropped regarding this case as Webster went through a diversion program, which is absolutely asinine. Let's send this guy through a diversion program when he thought that it was okay to basically kidnap an ex-girlfriend after grabbing her by the throat and then forcing her to the ground. Not only that, after he's done this, let's hire him to play in the NFL. That's a great choice. Let's give this guy a platform. Jesus Christ. The fact that he even went on to play in the NFL is freaking horrific. I don't understand this shit. This is actually insane to me. And clearly, listen, guys, we're going to get into it, but the diversion program, I'm so upset I can't even talk. The diversion program did not help. Because in 2011, Webster was indicted for sexual battery, gross sexual imposition, as well as 5 counts of sexual contact with a minor. Hello? Great use of a diversion program. You know what that's for? Kids who smoke marijuana, you dumbasses. Jesus Christ. The charges themselves state that Webster had repeated sex with a 15-year-old girl that was the daughter of former assistant coach for the Bengals, a team he played on. Reports state that Webster used guns to intimidate the girl into having sex and keeping their relationship a secret. He even stated that he would kill her along with her family if she told anyone about what was going on. At the time of his arrest, Webster was working as a coach at Bellevue High School. So clearly whatever diversion program he went through didn't fucking work because he lacks any sort of respect for women of any age. Also, he is a child predator. As for punishment, Webster was sentenced to 12 years, which in my opinion is not enough. This guy absolutely sucks, and the fact that he was ever even allowed to play for the NFL after the shit that he did is absolutely insane. Because we don't hold people accountable, they can just do whatever they want, however they want, all the freaking time, and nobody actually gives a flying shit. Anybody that has a position of power that could prevent this stuff from happening just doesn't freaking do it, and I will never understand it. It's honestly, I'm going to say it like it is, a lot of the time it's just men enabling men. Do women play a part? Yes. But if you look at these instances, it's men enabling men, because who predominantly runs the NFL? It's not women, I can tell you that much. Because women aren't allowed in football. That's a big no-no. That's a man's thing. So men, hold each other accountable, because this shit's stupid. Kellen Winslow II was drafted to the Cleveland Browns as the 6th pick overall in the 2004 NFL Draft, where he played as a tight end. While playing for a series of teams during his career, Winslow would also go on to commit a series of crimes, starting with drug possession in 2014. In 2018, Winslow was charged with first-degree burglary after fleeing a trailer park. Later in 2018, Winslow went on to be arrested for kidnapping and rape. The charge states that Winslow managed to kidnap and rape 2 women. At this time, Winslow was placed on house arrest with a GPS after posting a $2 million bail. Are you shitting me? Oh my God. In a separate case around this time, Winslow was charged for raping an unconscious 17-year-old girl in 2003 while he was 19. This would have been during his collegiate career, which again makes me wonder how and why he was ever allowed into the NFL to begin with, because clearly this dude does not care. Let's give him more money and more power. Winslow went on to commit further sexual crimes as well as battery pertaining to senior citizens. So not only does he like having sex with minors, he likes abusing old people too. This guy's a real winner. One specific charge in 2019 was that Winslow raped an unconscious teenager and also committed sexual battery on a 54-year-old hitchhiker. These were 2 charges he pled guilty to in order to receive a plea deal. In all, Winslow received a 14-year sentence despite his extensive history of rape and violence. This guy sucks. Keith Wright was drafted as the last pick in the 6th round of the 2003 NFL Draft to play as a defensive tackle. Overall, his career was incredibly unimpressive, where he started with the Texans as a practice squad member and finished with the Detroit Lions. Overall, Wright's criminal career was worth more than his weight in the NFL. On July 21st, August 8th, and August 21st of 2011, Wright committed 3 separate home invasions, which the psychology of somebody who does home invasions is actually terrifying, because you have to not give a rat's ass about the homeowner, what could be in the home, what the homeowner is capable of. You don't care at all. You just go in and hope for the best. Like, home invasions and home invaders are some of the most terrifying people in the criminal world that you could ever encounter. Because they don't know if you're waiting on the other side of the door with a gun. They don't care. They're like, okay, cool, you're attack dogs? Whatever, I'll deal with them. I'm breaking into your house and I'm getting what I want. Home invasions are terrifying. And the fact that this guy was like, I'm going to do 3 of them? Insane. It's got a lot to do with the head trauma of football, which I'll get into later. But also, this dude has to have a certain degree of just psychopathy to not give this much of a shit at all. Now, each invasion followed the same pattern of threatening homeowners with a gun, demanding money and property, and then during one of the home invasions, Wright sexually assaulted, kidnapped, and forced a female victim to drive him to 2 different banks in an attempt to withdraw money. During his search of Wright's home, property from each victim was found within his home. He was also linked to the sexual assault case via DNA. While I wish I could elaborate more on his criminal record, many of the articles I found state the following, which is that Wright was ultimately found guilty of 19 charges, including armed robbery, kidnapping, forced oral copulation, first-degree burglary, and false imprisonment. Due to the severity and extent of his criminal record, Wright was given a 234-year prison sentence, which is the longest prison sentence for an athlete in history, so get fucked, dude. Also, you deserve it. That man, I'm pretty sure, definitely has... One, he's a sexual predator. Very much antisocial. Most likely pretty high on psychopathy charts, or at least a sociopath. You don't do that type of behavior and not have something that is inhibiting your ability to give a shit about other people. He clearly lacks empathy and really just basic reasoning and morality. So there's that as well. Ray Rice played as a running back for the Ravens after being elected by the team in the 2nd round of the 2008 NFL Draft. Rice was a very successful player, helping the Ravens win their Super Bowl championship in 2012. However, in 2014, Rice and his, at the time, girlfriend, now wife, were both arrested at Revel Casino in Atlantic City due to domestic violence. The incident occurred after both Rice and Palmer had too much to drink. Alcohol? No bueno. They began to yell obscenities at each other, and Palmer then spit in Rice's face, leading to him punching her. A video shows the two getting into a physical altercation in an elevator where they began to hit each other. While the charges were ultimately dropped after Rice agreed to undergo court-supervised counseling, I'm keeping Rice on the list because there is no doubt the crime was committed due to video evidence. Due to the incident, the NFL only suspended Rice from 2 games, though they later terminated him. This led Rice to file a lawsuit against the NFL for wrongful termination since they already punished him by a 2-game suspension. As far as I'm concerned, they should have fired him first instead of offering a suspension given the brutality of the domestic violence and assault incidents. However, that's not what happens because it's the NFL, and Rice was eventually given a large payout from the NFL in an undisclosed settlement. Now, to be clear, Palmer did go on to marry Rice, and I believe they are still together. Regardless, man or woman, married or not, neither individual should have hit each other or should have spit on each other. It's inexcusable to ever lay a hand on your partner, regardless of gender, popularity, occupation, race, literally anything. I think they both should have had punishment. The way I see it, though, is if this guy's going to be in the NFL and he's going to be famous and popular and people are going to know him, he needs to be held to a higher standard. That's just how it is with any law, with any profession. If you're in law enforcement, you're held to a higher standard because you are in law enforcement. If you're going to be in the NFL and you're going to be a role model for people, you need to be held to a higher standard. I'm hoping this was just a one-off incident. I don't know. Again, this is just my opinion. You can completely disagree with me. That is fine. this is more of a gray area than some of the other cases that have been pretty black and white. But yeah, they should not have done that to each other at all. Alcohol definitely was a part of it, but regardless, you should not have the wherewithal to lay a hand on your partner or spit on them or anything like that. So their behavior, in my opinion, regardless of gender, was completely unacceptable, and they both should be held accountable. Aaron Kromer is the offensive line coach for the Buffalo Bills. In 2015, Kromer had a run-in with law in the... Whoa. Good God, I cannot talk. In 2015, Kromer had a run-in with the law where he and his son Zachary got into an altercation with the neighbor's son. The neighbor's son is notably a minor. The neighbor's son, along with 2 other boys, were in the process of using Kromer's beach chairs without asking. You know, typical childhood behavior. I'd be upset about it too if they were mine. But I also would have handled it like a reasonable individual. Angered, Kromer grabbed one of the boys' fishing poles and threw it into the water. Dick move. He then reportedly shoved one of the boys down onto the ground and punched him in the face. Again, dick move, unacceptable. He then demanded that they return the chairs. The boys filed police reports, which stated that bodily harm was done to the boy's left eye. On top of assaulting the boy, Kromer went on to threaten his victim, stating that he'd kill the boy's family if the boy reported him to police. This dude's an upstanding citizen. Kromer's son Zachary stayed behind while his father went home to try and help the neighborhood boys locate their fishing pole before also returning to his residence. Ultimately, Kromer was suspended for 6 games, and 2 weeks later, charges were dropped, though there's no disclosed reason as to why. In many instances, I personally would remove Kromer from the Iceberg, as he technically wasn't found guilty of assault. However, the boy's eye injury is documented, proving the assault actually happened, so regardless of the charges being dropped, it happened and this guy can suck a dick. It's kind of similar to Ray Rice. Evidence indicates that the crime happened regardless of guilt found in court. Unfortunately, because the charges were dropped, Kromer continued his career in the NFL, where he was promoted to game coordinator for the Rams, who he worked for at the time, because, you know, it's fine to just punch a child in the face over your lawn chair. That can't end poorly. Nobody's going to be upset about that at all. What are you talking about? Goodness gracious. All right. Well, I think what I'm going to do is a part 3, because tier 7 is where we bring in the manslaughter, murder, and attempted murder folks. And this is way longer than I remember it being. So we'll do like an episode just on tier 7. But yeah, just to kind of recap some of the BS that happened in this episode. Yeah, there's way too many child predators in the NFL who don't actually, get punished at all. Actually, there's a lot of BS that happens in the NFL where people don't get punished at all. Which is what I'm learning, and I'm not a fan of it. Thank God I don't like football, but it actually kind of makes a lot of sense if you think about it. Yeah, I don't think not only the NFL, but I don't think the justice system punishes these guys nearly enough. I know I talked about the psych side of things a little bit, but one thing I do want to talk about is CTE, which will play a big part in part 7. So, I'm going to break that down because I do think this has a lot to do with why the crime rate in the NFL is as high as it is. So, CTE stands for, and I'm probably going to butcher how this is pronounced, chronic traumatic encephalopathy, which is a neurodegenerative disease which is often linked to repeated trauma in the head. It's often presented in a way which is through mood problems, behavioral problems, critical thinking issues. It gets worse over time, and it's seen predominantly in sports that have a lot of contact and trauma to the head, like boxing, kickboxing, martial arts, MMA, football, rugby, I mean, I guess kind of soccer, hockey. Hockey's a big one also. These types of things often create CTE. And if you look at the images of like a normal brain compared to a brain with advanced CTE, it's actually terrifying. I'm looking at one right now, and if you look at the left side of the brain, it's maybe about half the size of a normal brain if you have advanced CTE, which is horrifying. It looks just damaged. It looks almost kind of yellowy. It just doesn't look healthy. It's really upsetting to look at. So obviously, this is going to impact people's behavior. Now, signs and symptoms of CTE occur a lot in, like, I guess in 4 stages is what it's documented as, and it generally appears 8 to 10 years after, like, repetitive traumatic brain injuries, things like that. So first stage symptoms are confusion, disorientation, dizziness, and headaches. This can kind of be similar to concussion symptoms. Second stage symptoms are memory loss, social instability, impulsive behavior, and poor judgment, which I think can be seen a lot in just about everybody in this tier list. Then you have the third and fourth stages, which include things like dementia, movement disorders, speech impediments, sensory processing issues, tremors, vertigo, deafness, depression, and suicidality, different things like that. You can also get like different cognitive disorders, like certain instances of amnesia, different things like that. It obliterates your brain. And I think that a lot of football players don't take care of their brains the way that they should. And so I think when you start young and in childhood and you have issues where you're playing full contact sports, by the time you get to the NFL, if you have enough head trauma, you're going to have CTE by the time you get to the NFL, which is going to lead to poor decision making. You're not going to be able to critically think the way that a normal person would because your brain literally just isn't there. Like there's parts of it that are missing, that have been deteriorated, that have been damaged. I don't think it excuses all of the behavior of the people in this tier list by any means. I think it just exacerbates it. And then you look at instances where people are having substance abuse issues. That doesn't help either. That affects your brain. That's going to mess up your brain. And then if you're having repeated head injuries and head trauma, like you're literally turning the thing that makes you who you are into mush. You are destroying it. And I don't you can't reverse it, which is the sad part. And that's, unfortunately, once the damage is done, you can really only mitigate it after that and try to treat it the best that you can. But I do think that head trauma and CTE is a big reason why so many of these people in the NFL have criminal histories. There's probably other things as well, like the environment they grew up in, how they were, raised, where they were born, were they exposed to a lot of violence as a kid? Were they not? Different things like that. But I would be remiss to not talk about CTE if in something like this. It'll come up a lot in the Aaron Hernandez case that I'll talk about next time when we do the NFL Iceberg, because that was a very big driving force behind some of the behaviors that he did. There was a lot of other stuff as well that helped compound that issue. But the other thing too is there's a lot of NFL players who commit suicide because of CTE. They deteriorate so much where, you have dementia. Like it's honestly pretty sad. And I wish the NFL took care of its players more, because obviously in this iceberg in and of itself, like a lot of them who have issues, these issues are known by their coaches, and their coaches don't care. Their coaches care about an NFL Super Bowl. Their coaches care about a paycheck. The owners care about a paycheck. Like it's sad. It really is. I think there's a very toxic culture surrounding football, both from a fan perspective, but also from the organization itself. And I think there's a lot of work that could be done there. I just don't see that happening, because this is going to sound bad, and you can call me, whatever you want. It's run by men. It's by men for men, basically. That's what football is. That's what it's socially known as. Like, women don't really have a place in football outside of being a fan, and even then, women are treated like they're stupid when it comes to football. It's an organization by men who are like, oh, I'm the biggest, most macho, uber masculine dude that there ever was because I beat other people up in pads. And they don't care. They're not going to take care of each other, and I just wish that wasn't the case. But unfortunately, it is. And I can't do much about it other than and then whine about it and say that I don't agree with it. But it is what it is. Yeah, that's it. That's it for this episode. I'll dive into the tier 7 sometime soon. I'm going to try and do an episode on Jerusalem Syndrome, like I said, Heretic, the movie that I watched recently with my friend Kanai. Shout out to Kanai. He's fantastic. I love that guy. But, yeah, I don't have anything else for you guys. If you're watching on YouTube, say hi in the comments. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know your thoughts and feelings. Even if you feel like it, let me know what your favorite NFL team is. I don't really have a favorite. I just like the Cardinals because that's where I live. So, like, I mean, I'm biased, but I don't even watch football. But, yeah, let me know what you think is the superior team. Also, just unrelated, if you guys get a chance to go to Fright Fest or, like, Six Flags, do it. I got this cool Joker shirt. Look how cool it is. It's bomb. Bomb as shit. Do it. It's super fun. It's actually relatively cheap. That's where I went to vacation with my family, and we had a blast. So, shout out to them. The bathrooms could be better, though, I will be honest. But, hey, football. We're talking about football. Travis Kelce is supposed to start donating money and, like, support Six Flags, so who knows? Maybe the bathrooms will get better. Anyways, I am rambling now. So, thank you for being here. Don't forget to take care of each other, stay safe, stay vigilant, and stay psyched out.